Hey Wargamers, I have another army list review video for you today. Basically what happens here is I'm taking lists that are submitted by my patrons on Patreon, reviewing them and revising them in a way that is coherent with my reviews of the units on my channel here. So if you want me to review your list, go on and head on over to Patreon, check it out. So long as you're a Patreon, I will do the review for you, even if it's just $1. I appreciate it and want to show my thanks. So this is one way that I do that. All right, so I have a 2,000 point Tau army list here. It basically is comprised of 3 different detachments. A Outrider detachment with a Fireblade, 3 units of Pathfinders, a Spearhead detachment with Longstrike and 3 Hammerheads, and then a Battalion detachment with a Fireblade, a Commander, and then 6 units of Fire Warriors, a Crisis Suit team, and a Ghost Keel as well. So let's kind of start at the top and talk about the things that I like about this, the things that I don't like about this. Of course, these are just my opinions and suggestions. I think really the best way to build an army is to build a list that you like, that jives with your perspective on the army, how you play, your play style, the models you have, everything like that, and then just kind of incrementally change it through multiple play testing. So this is going to be just a kind of a blind approach on where I think a good starting point would be given this raw material, but you know, really it comes down to a process of trial and error in the end. So all right, so let's start off with this Outrider detachment. The Fireblade, I think, is awesome. You know, we do have another Fireblade in this list, so having 2 Fireblades can be a little heavy, but still, I think the Fireblade is one of the best HQs in the Tau Codex, and so having 2 of them, you know, is okay. We'll talk more about that when I show you my revised list after this, though. The 3 Pathfinder teams, these are all good. I like having 6 Pathfinders is good. 5 Pathfinders is also fine. I wouldn't push this to be much larger than 6 Pathfinders per squad. And so this is kind of the most I would do. But each one having a Pulse Accelerator drone, I think, is a bit bulky. I'm not a huge fan of the Pulse Accelerator drone just in general. But if you are going to take one, which it seems is the idea here. If you are going to take one, I think you only need 1. The reason is that this is really only going to be useful when you are firing the Pathfinders as, you know, carbines, or for neighboring strike teams. And if you are having your strike team surrounding a Fireblade, you're going to want to have your Pulse Accelerator drone there as well, and so you really only need 1 drone. If you have multiple drones, it does allow you to break those units up a bit more, but you're reducing the benefit that you're getting from Fireblades, and you are leaving yourself out more open to charges and things like that too. So I think it's more synergistic just to have 1 Pulse Accelerator drone if you are going to take one. Additionally, having 3 Pulse Accelerator drones in 3 separate units means that you have 3 one-man drone units that are super easy to just pick off. So especially in kill points missions, that's going to be a big handicap for this list. So I don't think that taking 3 Pulse Accelerator drones is fully necessary here. Moving into the Spearhead detachment, I like it. I like it a lot. You have Longstrike, which if you've watched my videos, you know I think Longstrike is the de facto Hammerhead that you should take. There's really no reason to take any other Hammerhead aside from Longstrike unless you've already taken Longstrike. So that's good. I like the gun drones. I like the Railgun on there. And then the 3 Hammerheads have a Seeker missile each. I would actually redirect those. I would take at least 2 of them. Well, I mean, only 2 of them technically is all you can do. I would take 2 of them, put them on Longstrike, because if you get enough Markerlights on something, you'll be able to have him move and shoot at even a flyer and still hit on 2s. So really think that Longstrike is the most reliable source for those missiles, and really the way that you want to go. And then if you want to do any other missiles, you can always put them on these other Hammerheads on top of that. Moving on to the Battalion detachment, this is the meat and potatoes of the command points for the list. We have another Fireblade, and we've talked about that already, that I think having two might be a little much, although they are a good Markerlight source. You have plenty of Pathfinders in this list already, and it's not fully necessary to have them. Having a second one does allow you a little bit more modularization in your army, allowing you to break up different infantry blocks, which again is good. It can have some benefits, but none of these blocks are going to be particularly mobile, and so yeah, I don't think you necessarily need two of them. The Fusion Commander, he's a staple of the Tau army right now. I think a lot of people are running the Fusion Commander as a great source of multiple wound shots or multi-damage shots, and I don't have a lot to say about that other than you already have a lot of railguns in this list, and so Fusion Commander may not necessarily be necessary. I think a bigger weakness in this list is taking out, like Terminator equivalents or things that have 2 or 3 wounds and a reasonable armor save. I think they are going to be not as easily taken out by railguns, and they are also not going to be taken out easily by infantry. So you have kind of this middle ground that's a little bit of a weak spot here, and so I would maybe consider transitioning him to a role that addresses that. He also has 2 gun drones, which is appealing because it does allow him some benefits from being a character. If you deep strike him in all by himself, those gun drones can soak up wounds for him, or force the opponent to shoot at the drones before they shoot at the commander. But again, they're a 2-man unit. They're not going to last very long, and so they're not necessarily going to do a whole lot for you. It's an easy kill point for your opponent, and so I tend to shy away from those. Then we have a bunch of units of Fire Warriors, which again are good. I like having them in conjunction with the Fireblades. I think they're going to put out a lot of shots, which is good. I don't know how I feel about having so many smaller units, though. Smaller units are more resilient to, or more resistant to, morale, but it also makes it more difficult to position all of them in a way that can utilize a Fireblade. So there's that. I think I'd prefer fewer, slightly larger units. Moving on to the elite section, we have crisis suits here. This is pretty much a loadout that I've recommended before, so I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. I do like this setup. A fair number of gun drones in here is good. Having the flamer in there and plasma rifle is good. The only weakness here is that there's not a strike team with a homing beacon, and so you're not going to be able to utilize those flamers very aggressively. You're not going to be able to use them aggressively at all, at least on the deep strike. You are going to be waiting for your second turn after deep strike, or for a charge to really use those, and so that's somewhat of a missed opportunity there. And then finally, there's a ghost keel that is full fusion and multi-tracker and target lock. I like that. I think the ghost keel has a fair amount of survivability, so you don't necessarily need to invest in a shield generator. But yeah, so this gives you some Markerlight independence and can potentially put out some shots. So again, it runs into a little bit of the issue that the commander had with potentially being redundant with the railguns. So yeah, overall I think it's a fine list, but there are a few recommendations that I have, and we'll talk about that in a moment here. All right, and here is the revised version of that list. So we can just kind of work through it from the top without going over much detail. I try to maintain a lot of the same general elements that were in the original list. I tried to anticipate how it would be used and kind of the theme that was intended with it. And so a lot of the general elements are the same with some tweaks that I think will make it a more effective army list overall. So we stay with the Outrider detachment. We actually keep all the detachments the same, just slight variations on those. So the Outrider detachment has the only Fireblade in the army, as well as those 3 units of Pathfinders, but I've reduced them all down to 5-man units, and as I mentioned before, I only have 1 Pulse Accelerator drone. Typically, I wouldn't include those, but since that is a preferred upgrade for these units, I've included the 1. Then moving on to the Spearhead detachment. Again, I have Longstrike, and he is the one with 2 Seeker missiles, but I actually think Seeker missiles are a really good investment for the points if you have enough Markerlight support, which this army does. So we went ahead and put 2 Seeker missiles on everybody. Everybody gets 2 Seeker missiles, and they maintain the Railgun and gun drone setup as before as well, because I think that is optimal as well too. So and then moving on to the Battalion detachment, I replaced the single commander with 2 commanders with 3 cyclic ion blasters and multi-tracker. Now the reason I did this was because, again, I think that there's a weakness in the old list relative to more durable infantry, or like heavy infantry. That list would be weak against, and so having this 3 cyclic ion blaster commander and his twin alleviate that issue to some extent. And then I went ahead and threw multi-trackers on them, because if you want to overcharge them, that makes them Markerlight independent, which is good. In addition, we have 3 units of Fire Warriors, the minimum in order to get the Battalion detachment, but you'll notice they have 8 Fire Warriors in each of them. So it's a net decrease in the number of Fire Warriors, yes, but they are 3 units that are larger than they were before, and I think they'll pair well with having the rest of the setup as it is. It's a little bit more evenly distributed between heavy firepower, mid-range firepower, and weaker firepower in the form of infantry. So I think these guys will pair up well. And they can easily be positioned around the Fireblade for maximum fire output. Moving to the elites, this is where probably the biggest change is. I've dropped the Ghost Keel because, again, he seemed a little redundant with the other elements of the army, and I wanted the points for other things. So I put in a unit of stealth suits. The number 1 reason is because I want that homing beacon. So these guys have a homing beacon, and then the unit needs to be big enough to actually survive a turn or 2 to deliver that homing beacon, if not for 3 turns. Now, generally there's an advantage for dropping down later in the game. If you can weather the storm for turns 1 and 2, it's best to drop down turn 3, because your opponent is typically more spread out. They are less organized, and you can really take advantage of some poor positioning on turn 3. It also sets you up for a strong finish too, if you're able to bring your guys in a little bit later. So having that homing beacon and having a unit of stealth suits that's large enough to keep that homing beacon off the table until you really need it is very nice. So this is a 6-man stealth suit unit with a homing beacon. Other than that, bare bones. And then the crisis suit unit, I've expanded a little bit, having added a guy or 2 here. So we have 4 Shas'ui and 1 Shas'rai. The Shas'ui have flamers and 2 plasma rifles, and the Shas'rai has a drone controller and 2 plasma rifles. The drone controller is a holdout from the previous army list. And I think that it pairs well. If you're going to put a drone controller in this army, this is a good spot for it. Although it's not absolutely critical. You could switch that out for a flamer if you wanted to, but really you're having a 50% increase in the accuracy of the drones, of the 8 drones that you have. So that really that pays for itself there, basically. So otherwise you have 4 flamers and let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 plasma rifles. So you can put out a fair number of shots, and I think this makes it a little bit harder hitting unit. And again, looking towards being able to take out those heavy infantry, this is going to be a good combo for that. I think a good strategy here is to have the stealth team march up the flank, drop their homing beacon, and then at the same time drop the crisis suits and the 2 commanders directly behind them. This gives the commanders plenty of range still, because the crisis suit are going to be hopefully within 9 inches, and then the commanders can be anywhere between there and 18 inches away, or excuse me, 9 inches and 9 to 18 inches away. Still plenty of range to use their cyclic ion blasters, plus they get the benefit of having closer units to the enemy and can benefit from the crisis units drones that they brought with them. So I think they synergize very well. It gives you basically 3 fire bases. It gives you your forward unit that I just described. It has your more stationary heavy support unit being the Hammerhead squadron basically, and then the more mobile element that will be in your deployment zone, and that's your infantry unit. So they're not going to be running up the board, but they can grab those midfield objectives. They can grab objectives in your deployment zone and still offer plenty of support. So overall, I think this list is fairly well balanced. It will do well in a variety of settings, and should compete fairly well in general. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Of course, like I said, if you want to submit a list for me to review, you can do so over on Patreon. And as always, happy wargaming.